Hey guys, thanks for checking out my channel. I appreciate it. The topic of my short video today is once again psychology. I've got two book recommendations for you guys that I think are really interesting and relevant that I really recommend that you check out. And the first book I want to talk about is Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters. From dating, shopping, and praying to going to war and becoming a billionaire, two evolutionary psychologists explain why we do what we do, by Alan S. Miller and Satoshi Kanazawa. So this was my first introduction to evolutionary psychology, and I think everyone should learn about evolutionary psychology and have that as one of the lenses that they have to sort of analyze society by. Now, it's not the be-all end-all of anything, and there's criticisms of a lot of ideas of evolutionary psychology, and with everything I think that this should be taken in along with many other things, and you should be reading the criticisms of the things too. However, this is a really good introduction to the field of evolutionary psychology, which is controversial, and it's actually basically a rebranding of the field that used to be called sociobiology, and then which it's problematic politically for a lot of ideas, and so people don't like it, and so it is controversial stuff often. But the whole idea is that as we can sort of tell, natural selection has shaped organisms physically, but a lot of people don't consider that the human psyche or the mind is shaped by evolution as well, which I take for granted that there's a process going on. Some sort of metaphysical process psychologically is happening as we physically evolve as well. And this book is a great introduction to the field because it's sort of a Q&A format, and it asks a lot of basic questions about things, talks a lot about money and war and all these things, and I'm recommending that people check this out. Satoshi Kanazawa himself, by the way, is a Japanese guy who's controversial. He used to have a column in Psychology Today, and then he got canceled basically, and he'd published research and he'd made the claim that was basically trying to judge which racial groups were the most attractive, and he made this controversial claim that black women were the least objectively attractive race of group demographic of females, I guess, globally. And whether or not you agree with that or how you would ever rate that subjectively is up to you, but that, be aware of that's sort of his controversial background. However, this is even if you don't like him or the ideas, you should be aware of this so that you can refute it or talk about it or have it because whether or not you're a materialist or not, there's something going on with psychology this is pragmatically necessary to understand this. It's practically necessary. It's if you want to engineer society, or stop societies from crumbling, some basic stuff you have to know. And now, the one specific thing that I have been thinking about this book a lot is in relation to the war in the Middle East with Israel. Because one of the questions that this book poses and then answers from an evolutionary psychology perspective is why ethnic and national conflict is so prevalent. And I think a lot of people don't have this lens of understanding how, it's about biology and certain groups trying to expand, and how, I also encourage people to look into, I'm going to make another video about behavioral biology and evolutionary biology, which you should learn about in addition to evolutionary psychology, because they obviously go together. But when it comes to these ethnic conflicts, if you're looking at something like Israel and Palestine strictly from a religious lens, and you don't have any understanding of human nature or biology or even religion and bioculture and stuff like that, you're so in the dark and you're in your own little bubble. You have to understand, I would put forth that you have to understand why we act the way we are, I guess. There's other questions in here why is sexual harassment so persistent, hostile environment, why men are equal opportunity harassers. That was all in the chapter on life's not fair or politically correct, but chapter 8, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the evolutionary psychology of religion and conflict. Where does religion come from? 2 different ways to get it wrong. This is just stuff that's worth considering when you're trying to understand big picture stuff. It's not great at applying it to necessarily 2 individuals, although this book is really creepy because it profiled somebody like me to a very precise detail, which changed my view of things a lot. But again, good introduction to the field of evolutionary psychology. I wish more people had that lens. The second book is shorter. It's really an extended essay. This one is one of my when it comes to nonfiction books, this would be in my top 3 of all. So this is a huge book that I love, and it's short. It's just called Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging by Sebastian Junger. Again, I don't want to get political in my videos, but this book changed my, it added to my understanding or view of like human nature in total, and changed a lot of the way I'd been thinking at the time years ago politically. Just because this book really, it's written by a guy, Sebastian Junger, who I think is really cool and interesting guy. He's a war veteran, and he's had PTSD, and he's kind of like healed from it, or talks about how he psychologically has dealt with it. Talks about, I think this book really made the point about how industrial countries, like first world countries like Canada, the US, have way higher suicide rates than third world countries, and why depression and things skyrocket in our type of environments that in primitive societies, for example, there's no concept of depression. And so it just talks about how our environment and culture has changed, and why being affluent and materially rich doesn't necessarily make you spiritually fulfilled or even just psychologically healthy. Another thing that it talks about in around page 63 is it talks about masculinity and femininity and gender roles, and how there are certain, to some degree, males and females are interchangeable for a lot of activities, but in certain circumstances the male and female gender roles kind of have to be performed. And so if there's an accident or something, or a population of people are stranded and there's only one gender, like all men in a plane crash, there'll become a dynamic where they take on different psychological roles. One seems more masculine at first, one seems more feminine, but the more masculine one burns out, and then the feminine, it's types of leadership, then the other one takes over, and it's sort of a strategy in nature for survival that comes out spontaneously. So the point there being that there are certain sort of gender dynamics that are inherent in our nature, and I'm not even taking like any kind of conservative approach to gender here. I'm just talking about like one of the interesting things about behavior that it talked about, because it talked about a Canadian example of all these men in a mining accident out on the East Coast, I think in like the 1940s, and there were a whole bunch of people that survived this coal mining accident, and well, they were trapped for days at a time in isolation. Like these different traits came out, and the men that became very assertive right in the beginning and very like domineering to like take care of everyone, they burned out after about 48 hours, and the other men had a different dynamic that took over after the first period, that were more concerned about like being empathetic and like understanding where men were psychologically and stuff, to keep the morale of the group going. So this book, Tribe, it just drove home to me the fact that we are very communal animals, for lack of a more precise word at the moment. I myself am very much like a loner. I've become more of an introverted loner, but I think this is a cultural symptom that's happening, like affecting a lot of us, and I'm very like libertarian minded in a lot of ways, but I also realize that like I'm not deluded in not understanding that I am a primate, a Homo sapien in my nature. It is in my nature to be part of a tribe and a team. I don't really have an extended network of people at the moment, so I am aware of the ways that affects me, and other people should think about that too. Like even things like eating meals as coming together for certain ritualistic things like Christmas and Thanksgiving stuff. These are more built into our biology than a lot of people understand, and why men why men would go to war and come back but still want to go back there again and be with other men in the military rather than feel comfortable here in a materialistic consumer culture. That's worth thinking about too. If you like fiction and you read something like Fight Club, then you want to read something nonfiction that I think complements something like that. Well, read Tribe. So I'm gonna keep this under 10 minutes, this video, but again, I'll just sum this up by saying I'm really recommending people check out Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters by Satoshi Kanazawa, which is an introduction basically to the field of evolutionary psychology and a basic layout of the framework of it, and also probably even more of a encouragement to get this one, Tribe, short essay on Homecoming and Belonging by Sebastian Junger. Just really interesting insights about human nature, especially for men, but I think both genders, men or both sexes, men and women, would really benefit from reading both of these two books. Will give you more insight about human nature to add to a large, broad view of things. So thanks for watching this video, and take care, guys.